Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Wizox AI, and Benny Keith Foods. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Liz Oba Killinger. Liz is a registered dietitian and seasoned leader at Thomas Cuisine, where she has served since 2017 in roles including project manager, food service director, and now Real Food Mission Ambassador. With a background in dietetics and a strong belief in food as medicine, Liz combines her clinical expertise and culinary passion to drive organizational change and promote nutrient-dense, scratch-made meals across diverse communities. Her leadership reflects a commitment to wellness, operational excellence, and the transformative power of real food. Liz, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we're connected on LinkedIn, and you get those updates on people start new roles. And I saw you pop up in my feed, and I saw that title of Real Food Mission Ambassador. And I thought, well, that's definitely something I think I need to learn more about. So you graciously decided to come on the podcast. And I'm familiar with Thomas Cuisine, haven't seen them in the industry. And obviously, this concept of real food, I think, is something that's really important to the senior living industry. So when you use the term real food, what are you truly talking about? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I kind of have a personal definition of real food. And then Thomas Cuisine has one for our company. And so, like you alluded to, I'm a dietitian. I've been in athletics growing up, and I've seen the way that food can really make a difference, not only in my health, but my performance. And now as a mom, real food for me has to be something that is recognizable, right? You see it in a store or on a plate. You know exactly what it is. I know that my body is going to know what to do with it, and it's going to have a positive impact. So for Thomas Cuisine, that's a little bit fluffy, right? So we had to be a little bit more granular for our chefs and our operators out there. But for our company, Thomas Cuisine really thinks real food, it has to be recognizable, and it kind of falls into 4 categories. So it's grown. So think of something like strawberries. It's raised, like maybe cattle or chickens. It could be caught like salmon or harvested like mushrooms and wheat. And if we're taking time to process or prepare it, that has to have a purpose, right? We want to maintain the nutrient density without adding a bunch of stuff that you don't need that maybe come from a factory or a laboratory.
Yeah, I think that's so important. One, because our residents in senior living are becoming much more mindful about the food. I remember 10 or 15 years ago, we could put anything out as long as it was good quality, that it met kind of that meat and potatoes mindset of the resident, and we provided a little bit of variety. We probably checked all the boxes, but residents these days have much different expectations. They're much more well-versed and well-traveled when it comes to food and the culinary scene. And so I think having this approach of real food can have an impact on our residents in senior living space.
Yeah, they're so much more curious now, and they're savvy. They'll tell you, where is this grass fed? Where was this raised? And you're right, those are questions that we wouldn't have gotten just a couple years ago.
Thinking about residents, one of the things that I know, I tell clients all the time, you get 80 residents and you get 95 opinions on the food, and everybody's got a different direction. When you think about those resident preferences, right? Because you still have some that just want that simple food, that others that are very high expectations. When you think about this real food philosophy, how do you balance resident preferences with the approach of real food that Thomas Cuisine takes when supporting them?
It can be difficult sometimes, as you have mentioned, everybody, half the people you say, did you like this, will love it. Half the people will hate it. And so I think the first step in being a good partner to those residents is actually being engaged in that discussion. So whether that is having somebody on the resident council, the food committee, it's being involved in hearing what the residents like, and then using that to kind of craft your menu just as a starting point. So say we're a very meat and potatoes community, maybe you're down in Texas, we'll take that into consideration and don't make a California seafood-centric menu for these residents. Start with the low-hanging fruit and then be open to the feedback. So engage with the residents, educate them on why something might be better choice as a real food versus something they're used to. And I've also found that there are a couple very, very powerful voices in the room when you view those committees. And so really taking the time to get those stakeholders on your side and in your corner can make such a difference when you're trying to change or adapt a menu.
I think, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I would think that your approach, when you talked about it's got to be raised or it's got to be grown or harvested, even with that very simple meat and potatoes mindset, there's a lot that you can still do in that wheelhouse. And so when you think about creating menus and making menu changes, I'd love for you to share a story about a challenging menu change that you guys experienced, kind of crossing that bridge from that processed, maybe standardized items you can get versus your real food philosophy.
For over a century, Benny Keith has been a trusted leader in the food service industry. As a broadline distributor, we offer an extensive selection of products, delivering to 21 states through 10 distribution centers. We can help you create a thriving culinary culture by pairing quality products with customized solutions that elevate your residents' dining experience. Our team of registered dietitians provide unmatched customer service by modifying menus, selecting recipes, ensuring regulatory compliance, and more. Quality, value, and service are at the heart of everything we do. Benny Keith Foods puts the care back in healthcare.
Well, that's never happened, Darren. Every menu change has been some movie for us. No, as you know, it's stepwise. And so there's one that kind of stands out in my mind. And it was from a very meat and potatoes community. And they happen to love a certain brand, Marie Collander's chicken pot pie. That was the chicken pot pie that had to be on the menu. I was kind of covering as a director over this account. And I said, why do we have this on here? This isn't quite the real food that Thomas Cuisine would love to be serving. And I was told that they had tried to get it off the menu. They'd tried to replace it. They'd done a lot of different things, a taste panel. And so I said, maybe let's be a little creative and a little bit crafty. We did a cooking demo and it was for just pie crust, right? Had nothing to do with chicken pot pie. It was just a generic pie crust. We were showing that you could make it from scratch. It was very simple. I think we put it over berries or something. It had nothing to do with the chicken pot pie, but we're playing the long game here. So the next thing that we did, we said, hey, we're going to try, our cycle menu is starting over, and we're going to put on a very delicious lamb shepherd's pie, and we're going to use this homemade pie crust, and we would love to get your feedback on it. Oh, and they raved about it, right? They're like, oh, it's so flaky, the sauce, it's so flavorful. And so we're saying, okay, we're making some progress. The next thing that we slid in was chicken and dumplings. So that's basically a pie filling, right? So we've got fresh vegetables, we've got chicken stock, we've got chicken that we've roasted in-house, and we put it in there with these little tiny dumplings, and the residents like that too. And so, as you can see, we're piecing everything together. Eventually, we got to a composed chicken pot pie, and there were still some residents that said, hey, I really missed the old one. But then it's coming in and just being real and personable with them and saying, hey, but look, remember when we made this from scratch and we showed you the pie crust had 5 ingredients? Well, we took out 18 things that you don't need to have that aren't really going to be good for your well-being, your health, hitting on things that matter to them and just really changing their mentality over time. So it was a process. It was not snap your fingers and done.
Yeah, I think that's how you have to approach it, especially when you have those longer term residents that are very invested in how food service goes. one question when I think about that process, the way you described it, how does that work on your end when you think about staffing? Because, that Marie Callender's pot pie is super easy for the staff. It's let's get it, let's cook it, and we're serving it. Whereas if you're making something from scratch, there's more time invested, there's more involvement. And a lot of times you can get pushback from staff on that. And so how do you guys overcome that? How do you push back on the staff when maybe they're more hesitant to look at this process the way you do?
Yeah, you're right. And, sometimes as a food service partner, we come in and staff are already there. And sometimes we're able to hire and interview our own staff. When we can start from a fresh batch of candidates, that's something that we really try to tease out during that interview process is what is your cooking level? What is your skill? But you're right. Sometimes we might not always be there. And so we try to use it as a little bit more of a career growth thing to kind of motivate staff members. You said maybe they're used to just cutting open a bag of soup and pouring it into a container and heating it up. But, hey, wouldn't it be cool, Mr. Cook, if you could learn how to make this broth from scratch? It's just kind of investing in that curiosity. Sometimes we'll go a lot further than you think.
Yeah. I like that approach of it's an opportunity for them to grow in their careers. I think a lot of times we miss that in senior living where we're so worried about the day to day that we don't think longer term. So in your role, obviously you're thinking a little bit broader, a little bit bigger about not just keeping clients happy, but it's this philosophy behind how Thomas Cuisine approaches the real food, if you will. And so when you think about this approach to how you guys provide food service, how do you feel that has added to or contributes to things like resident engagement and well-being? Those two areas are very important for especially newer residents. So when you think about what you do, how do you influence or how does this contribute to those areas?
Yeah. So when I think about resident engagement, like you really do have a captive audience for the most part, right? They're seeing the same people in the dining room, they're coming down. And so real food really does help keep that fresh, right? So if you use seasonal ingredients that maybe they only see for a little while, that helps to invigorate what they see in front of them. The other thing that you can do that is great with resident engagement is partnering with the lifestyles department of whatever community you're at. So when you start mixing food with a farm tour or food with a wine pairing, or you go and learn at the grocery store, then all of a sudden it becomes more than just sitting down at 6 p.m. every night to get your meal. It's something that you can do with your friends. It's social. The wellness part obviously ties into real food because residents now are focusing much, much more on longevity. And so when they can learn about what they're eating and how it's going to help them keep their health longer, they're very engaged in being part of that.
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Some of those examples you gave, I love because I get very frustrated sometimes when I go into communities and I look at their activity calendar and they've got, we have a chef talk, which is basically they're going to talk about the menu, or they have a chef demo where the chef is just going to come out and basically it's a free food event where he or she just makes something and they give out the samples and that's it. And there's not really a lot of purpose or additional thought behind it. And I feel that there's so much opportunity with food to engage and connect and really draw residents in And some of those ideas that you had I loved it. The idea of learn at the grocery store or the farm tour, you can do those for any level of care. And it's so important to engage and keep residents active in that.
Yes, I would agree. We also at Thomas Cuisine, to kind of expand on that more, we have something called Cultivate, which is our teaching kitchen. So it actually pairs a chef, like you said, a little bit of a demo, but with a registered dietitian so that residents are learning from a medical professional about the food that they're eating. Hey, this is high in antioxidants. This is low in fiber or high in fiber. Do you have high blood pressure? Let's reduce your sodium. And then the chef translates that into something very easy that they can go and replicate at home that they get to sample. So it's another way to communicate our mission outward. Like you said, that's a little bit more unique and a little bit more engaging.
I love that. Being able to bridge, because a lot of times I do think this happens where we don't always, even those of us who are in the business, think of food and then think of wellness. We know you got to have nutrition, you got to eat healthy, but we don't ever like layer it, right? And think about that Venn diagram of food and nutrition and health. And there's a lot more overlap than I think we a lot of times do. And building an event or an interactive activity like that can bring so much value, not just to the residents, but also from a marketing and prospect perspective, because they see the value of being at that community than say one down the street that's not doing that.
Yeah, 100%. And again, a lot of times you said they're at odds, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to learn. I don't want to talk about diseases. I don't want to do this. I just want to eat good food. Well, when you can kind of blend those together or show that something that's very healthful can also be very delicious, it helps get buy-in and then everybody wins from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift a little bit about your role. Tell us a little bit about what it means to be a real food ambassador at Thomas Cuisine.
Yeah, this was a position that I stepped into in February. It is brand new for our company. And as an organization, Thomas Cuisine has always been very rooted in food and cooking from scratch and using quality ingredients. And we all kind of had a handle of what real food was in our own way across the company. But our leadership decided that we needed someone to spearhead a direction where everyone would be saying same thing, everyone rowing in the same direction, and then backing that up with changes within the organization. So first, it was crafting that definition, our manifesto around real food, and then saying, what do we need to do on the procurement side to make this a reality? How do we need to change our recipes or our production? What do we need to invest in as far as staff training, education? How do we get buy-in from both sides so that we are living this every single day? And that's where I stepped in to fill that as the ambassador. I am more of a public face as well. So like you said, you'll see me pop up on LinkedIn randomly or Instagram, but just really trying to spread what we're doing with the world at large so that they can see we're authentic. We're not getting it right 100% of the time, but we're willing to put in the work and we're willing to invest in resources to get us to that next level.
I think a lot of times if there's a chef or a food service director listening to this, they're going to know all of the behind the scenes, the recipes and the procurement and the sourcing. All of those things have a dramatic impact on what the final menu looks like. And so having somebody to spearhead that has to be critical on the back end. But I'm curious about how you communicate it out, because Thomas Cuisine is in the contract management business. So you're trying to not only provide great service and food for the clients you have, but you're out there talking to operators and trying to get them to understand what it is you do and what this real food could mean to their community. And so how do you go about communicating that to residents, administrators, and other stakeholders so they better understand it?
So I think the first step is it's really way back before we've even gotten the partnership, right? Before we've made that. It's just saying, hey, this is part of our DNA. It's part of our value proposition. And at this point, we're probably talking to community leaders and decision makers and saying, is this something that you value and you want? Because we're serious about providing it. We're not going to do lip service. We're not going to come in with bells and whistles and then rug pull you. We do mean it. And this is what it's going to take to operate an account like that, being very transparent. Then it is like I said, getting on those resident food committees and councils, engaging them in education and the cultivate demos, and really letting them see you saw your menu change and this is why. Let's talk about it. Let's get feedback and have an open dialogue, learn what you like, tweak it going forward, and kind of just get everyone on board with the mission. And another great way we like to communicate is just through technology. So menu boards, table cards, fun facts, talks. There's a lot of ways that you can get the mission out there within the community on their own platforms. And then, like I alluded to, so I do some cooking demonstrations. I do a lot of marketing. You know, I'm on your podcast trying to spread our mission. So we're trying to hit it from all angles so that everybody knows where we're going with real food.
When you talk to administrators, executive directors, they've got, wearing 17 hats, they've got 1,000 things on their to-do list. And at the end of the day, they're happy when they don't have residents in their office with food issues. How do you talk to them and how do you convince them that the real food mission is going to improve that for them, as opposed to just give them their meatloaf and mashed potatoes and let's just move along?
Yeah, I think you do kind of have to play that long game with the administrators, right? Because you're absolutely correct. The squeaky wheel is going to get the most attention. And a lot of times that's dining. It's someone just saying this and this and this and this. So it really is about sitting down with them and learning what their pain points are, saying, hey, residents are complaining about X, they want more Y. Here's what I'm committing to. Let's round back on it in a month, because they want deliverables. Their time is very valuable. And like you said, they're doing a million different jobs. So I think when you are engaging them, if you're very direct saying, here's the issue, here's our plan, let's reevaluate, they're very receptive to things like that. And especially with real food. So you weave the mission in, you say, we're going to change this. The broccoli's not going to come packed and frozen. I don't know why you do that, but we're going to freshly break it down so it's going to hold better. Or we've taught our chefs how to batch cook so that it's not sitting on the steam table. You're going to get less complaints about wilted brown vegetables.
Yeah. That communication with those administrators can be difficult. And so I'm glad that you guys have this philosophy and this approach to make sure they understand the value it's going to bring to them. So as you think about your role, right? You said you're 4 months in. What so far has been the most rewarding part of the position for you?
Ooh, that's hard. So I would say it's not even necessarily something that I've done, but as I've started talking and engaging with different people within our company, I got so much positive feedback and reassurance that it was overwhelming. You know, normally stepping into a new role where you're going to have to make some hard decisions, you're worried about the support that you're going to get from your own team. But I actually made a tiger team of about 11, 12 people, and they're called the Real Food Realists because I wanted some real dialogue. But they are from all different verticals. So we not only serve senior living, but we have corporate dining, healthcare, independent schools, and professional sports. And so we have people from all different types of our services. And we come together and say, how would this work in my account? And it's been, yes, I'm ready for change. We want the direction. Like, it's not going to be easy, but it's the right thing to do. And I think that was so rewarding from me to hear from my peers.
Yeah, I love that. If an operator is listening to this and they're like, well, we don't necessarily want to do third party right now. We want to maybe try something like this on our own. We want to emulate the Thomas Cuisine way, let's just say. What would be maybe 1 or 2 small things that they could do immediately that could help them move in this direction that you all have when thinking about real food?
So I would say to a single community or something kind of small, really go and take a look at your storeroom, your fridge, and your freezer, and look at where those low-hanging items are. And by that, I mean, it might be, why do I have 5 different types of frozen cookie dough, right? Can I make one of them from scratch? Let's try that. Or I have all of these frozen products. What could I possibly replace? So just kind of looking at what you have, looking at your current menu, and then go and talk to your distributor, your procurement provider, and leverage them for help. Say, hey, this is something that I want to do within my community. what suggestions do you have? What better products do you have? Because that's their wheelhouse. That's their bread and butter. They're going to know their catalog probably better than most operators or chefs, and they can help guide you and really be a driving force behind, again, picking some things that might be easy and some things that might be 6 months out or a year out that you can help change within your operation.
Yeah, you got to start small and easy. And I think that's a great place to do that if you're an operator. So talk to your residents. Absolutely. Liz, this has been a great conversation. I'd love for you to tell our listeners how they can learn more about your role as a real food ambassador, Thomas Cuisine, and what they can offer and how they can connect with you and the company.
Yeah, I would say, honestly, my LinkedIn page is a great way to reach out. I'm very responsive. Aaron found me. It might have taken a try or two, but we connected. ThomasCuisine.com has wonderful information about all those different verticals that we serve, as well as our real food mission, works that we've done in the community, sustainable partnerships that we have created and are working on. So I would love to connect with anyone who wants to learn more about my role, my work, or our company as a whole.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all that. Liz, I think, what you're doing is going to be really important for operators in senior living and across the industry to really see and understand as we have this demographic shift who we're serving. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing what you're doing around real food.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.